But the spiritual component of it was an understanding that all of this drama taking place is exactly how it needs to be and what needs to happen in this very moment. And that level of peace and knowing that this is what needed to happen in my life story to wake me up to the next bits of whatever my story is going to be, for me to have greater acceptance of the medical system, for me to have, less defense in myself, all of those pieces had to happen for me for my own evolution. So I got that greater understanding of it's perfect as it is. As much as little you doesn't want this experience, bigger you knows that this is exactly right.
I'm pleased to have Dr. Nicole Gruel here with me today. Dr. Gruel died when she was just 14 years old when she drowned in New Zealand. And she also had several other experiences that she's going to share with us today, but we'll start out with her near-death experience. Dr. Gruel, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you coming on.
Tia, thank you so much for the invitation. I love these conversations, and it's always a beautiful opportunity to share with fellow people who have experienced and are curious about the extraordinary. So I can dive right in if you want to the New Zealand experience.
Let's go for it. Yeah.
All right. So I grew up anyway having kind of non-ordinary experiences that to me were ordinary. Right. I could sense presences and I just that like any child, a child always thinks that, whatever they're experiencing is normal. And so that's how it was. So when I was 14 years old, I went over to New Zealand. I was there with a girlfriend who was a bit older than me. And if you've been to New Zealand, you will know that they just have the most extraordinary nature, big mountains, big rivers, beautiful. And so we decided to go whitewater rafting. And so we had a briefing that morning with the trainers, and they, we put our life vests on and they told us what to do and how you hold on to your things and how you go up and down the rapids. So we went through all of that. And we carried our raft now. This is the two trainers, the two guys, and my girlfriend, my friend, and myself. And we're walking up the mountain, up, because you've got to go upstream where you begin. And then off we went, and we started to descend and go down this amazing, amazing river. And if anyone here has been whitewater rafting before, you will know the power of the water that kind of surges as you go along, right? And you really just have to do your best to go with the dips and curves. So we did that, and one of the features of this waterfall is a 10-meter drop, which I think is like 20 foot or something like that. It's big. Anyway, it's a very big drop. And so we went down that the first time with no problems. It was amazing, perfect. It bounced and off we went. And we were just so full of adrenaline and joy. And so what do you do when you're a teenager and you have something amazing? You decide to do it again. So off we went the second time. We went up the mountain, came down, did exactly the same thing, only this time when the boat went over, when the raft went over the 10-meter waterfall, the nose hit the bottom and it tipped the other way. I got thrown out of the boat. I think the others, as far as I'm aware, stayed in the boat. They were holding onto the ropes, tipped it back over. Now, I grew up a swimmer. And so my swimming reflex was, once I was in the water, was to put my arms out and to try and swim. And when you're underwater with that much water pounding down on top of you, that's actually the worst thing that you can do, because I increased my surface area and the water just pushed me down even further. So I went into black water. I looked around, I had my eyes open underwater, and I actually didn't know which way was up or down or left or right. I had complete vertigo, and it was black water. And in that moment, I knew I was on my last breath, and I had a moment of total panic, because this is it, my last breath. What do you do? And interestingly, after that moment of sheer panic, I experienced complete calm, complete stillness. And I looked out in this black water And what I saw happen in front of me was a horizon of light open up. It was like this beautiful glowing light. And the closest thing I've ever seen in the movies is the movie Ghost. If you've seen that scene where they get reunited and that horizon of light opens up again, that's the closest thing I've ever seen that looks like this. So this horizon of light opened up in black water, right? This is what I was seeing. And coming towards me was my then living grandmother. So my mum's mum. And usually people experience someone who's already crossed over, but I experienced someone who was actually still living at that time. She's gone now. So she was coming towards me, and next to her was my first dog, my first pet who had crossed over. And I grew up an only child, and so my pets were like my siblings. They meant the world to me. And when that first animal died, it was a disaster in my world. Got run over by a car. So these two presences were coming towards me. And you got to remember, I'm 14 years old, right? So I've got the mind of a 14. And I'm looking at them and I thought, this is unusual. What are you doing here? And then, right here, behind my left ear, I heard a male voice say, Nicole, remember to breathe. And in that moment, I guess my frontal cortex, it kicked in with the training that I had. And I remembered the trainers said, if you get into the water, you have to curl up like a ball. So I did that because, of course, remember, I had a life jacket on. So I curled up like a ball and then I just rose like a cork does. And the dark water went into dark green and light green and eventually came up to the surface. And I took air. And I was lucky I came out where I did because it was the mouth of a small cave. And with the water that gushes like that, that kind of water only goes one way at the mouth of the cave. So fortunately, I came up where I did. And the people, they were all in the boat at this stage. The boat was back up and they were looking for me. I surfaced and they came straight over and they pulled me out. And so I lived that day, fortunately. And being a 14-year-old, I truly didn't think that much of it other than I was glad to be alive, and to carry on. And we carried on with our trip and our adventure. And it really wasn't until later in my life when I experienced a series of well, first within that 6 months where I had my near death experience, I actually experienced a series of deaths in my family. My father passed away suddenly on the other side of the earth. We never got to say goodbye. I was very angry when he left. We had a lot of unresolved stuff that was going on, and there were substance issues involved there. So we had parted in negative terms. So he died over the other side of the world of a heart attack. And then his father passed away within that. And then soon after, my mother's father passed away. So it was boom, 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 boom. We had all of these deaths. Now, I was completely incapable at that age to process so many deaths. And then including my own near death experience, right? So, again, as a teenager, I just carried on. I did what a lot of teenagers did. I was involved, I got mixed up in substances, even though my father had been. I said I never would be. That's typical of what happens when substances run through the family and addiction. So I experimented as a teenager, and I guess I went through years of um, not processing these grief and death experiences in healthful ways until I really came into my 20s. I discovered yoga. I gave myself wholeheartedly to dedication and practice. It was a 24/7 thing for me. I even did some stays over several months in different ashrams. I was ready to kind of shave my head, put on the robes, and live my life in a monastery, in an ashram for the rest of my life. Because what happened in being in those places was I actually started to unpack not only the near death experience that I'd had, also many other mystical experiences that I'd had. I started to have a framework that I could understand that these are normal, healthy, natural experiences that a spirit encapsulated in a human form can go through. These are just things that happen. Nothing supernatural, nothing super extraordinary. We can actually access them when we get very clear in our channel and our body. We all have access to these things. So yoga really allowed me a discipline where I could tap into these experiences in a healthy way, unpack them, process them and accelerate them, and refine them in other ways, so that, I on tap, I could really reconnect with some of these experiences. And that's called integration, right? When you start to unpack and integrate all of this. So I learned how to integrate these experiences in a wholesome way and then start to move forward in my life. And I carried on and I ended up having several other experiences. But what came out as a result of that was I could see other experiences, other experiencers, people who'd also been through something similar to me. It became very easy for me to pick out those people. It was kind of like out of a crowd, I could see them like flames, like, oh, you've been there too. And I know that, people like you, Tia, people on your channel might have experienced this, where if you've had these experiences, you might draw people like that in towards you as well, where they just naturally get talking and they're sharing their whole life story and these kinds of things. They're like, I don't know why I'm telling you this stuff. And this type of thing happens all the time. So I have a real resonance with my fellow experiencers of the extraordinary, because I understand how powerful these experiences that we have can be in helping us understand who we are, helping us figure out what this great existence is all about, and then taking our next steps forward in a meaningful way.
Right, exactly. And I think almost the experiences are really interesting, and phenomenal, really. And to think that, people die and they come back, or go to the brink of death and come back and they see the other side, or they see parts of the other side, or deceased loved ones, or in your case, not even deceased loved ones, but just
Yeah.
someone you were connected to. I think
Yes.
that is phenomenal. But there's messages that come across in these experiences too, that I think come across because humanity is ready to upgrade. We're ready to level up, to move to the next dimension of being. So I think it's really cool how you come on and you share not only your experiences, but some of the messages that came with those experiences. Now, you had another experience in your early adulthood, or you've actually had a few other ones. One was when you were giving birth, right?
Correct. Yeah.
What happened there?
So this is 7 years ago now, and I was ready to give birth. My waters had broken. This was my first child, and the baby wasn't coming. The waters broke, and not much else was happening. I was having those early contractions, but it wasn't ready. And anyway, long story short, 30 hours later, 30, and very exhausted and with a very worried hospital team. I wanted to kind of not do it, not be in the hospital as much as possible and do everything as naturally as possible. And we tried everything, but it got to the point where the hospital team was quite worried. I was getting really tired. And so I ended up agreeing to having some medical intervention, which I was so reluctant to do, but I agreed. And as soon as they gave me the Pitocin, which is what gets the contractions going very fast, things went pear-shaped quickly. I had quite a bad reaction to it. Things accelerated very fast, and they had to give me some happy gas. That's what it was. And I hadn't had anything at all, to ease the experience. So this was the kind of first pain remedy. So they gave me the happy gas, which I actually think is banned in the US, but we still do it in Australia. So they gave me the happy gas, and I understand why it was called happy gas, because I was like Darth Vader with the mask. They couldn't get it off me. I was like, just taking this stuff in. And they probably turned the switch off, because I just wouldn't let go of that mask. But there was something about the exhaustion, the stress of the experience, and that happy gas that triggered another experience for me. So I'm in the birthing suite with all the chaos that goes on in a birthing suite. My physical body is kind of up like this because I was all tensed up from the experience. And my husband was in the room. I think my mother was in the room, and the nurses and midwives. And suddenly, the horizon of light, the exact same horizon of light, broke out in front of me. Only this time, I was aware of the room that I was in as well as the horizon of light at the same time. It was a dual consciousness experience. And it opened up in front of me, and I understood, because now I had the language, right? I'd done a lot of study in this area. I knew what was going on in my experience now, and I actually had the language to turn around to my husband and say, I think I'm having a near-death experience. One of us might not make it, and it's going to be okay. I think those were the words. I'm starting to get a bit hazy in my recollection, but I'm pretty sure that's what happened. And my poor partner, I'm not quite sure what his feeling must have been in that moment. But what hit me in that moment, and I knew I could feel the presence of my child that was coming through. And I just knew in that moment that one of us might not make it, because we were literally standing at the gateway. We were at that horizon, right, between this life and the beyond. I also saw in that moment myself standing on stage delivering the story about birthing her in that moment. And so I knew that the story would move forward as well in some way, that was going to be, a significant thing to be sharing with other people. The good news is we both made it through that moment. So that was wonderful. Although I also got the wisdom, I got the download in that moment that we should go ahead with the cesarean, which again, if you know me, you would have, and the way I conducted my birthing experience, you would know that that is the furthest thing from how I would want to do things. But I got it in that moment that, yes, let's just go ahead and do it. And within 1 hour, I had my baby in my arms through an emergency cesarean experience. And the surgeon came in the next morning and said to me, Nicole, it's lucky we took your child out when we did, because any longer and we would have been reviving her on the table. So she was very close. And I just feel that moment in the horizon was that knowing and that connection, that if we are both going to make it through, then this is just how we're going to have to do it. And as imperfect as some of these experiences are, and I know a lot of mamas come out of a hospital actually highly traumatized, particularly in the way that modern medicine does birth, it gave me so much peace. Even though it was a traumatic experience, it actually gave me so much peace, not only knowing that we were both okay, but the spiritual component of it was an understanding that all of this drama taking place is exactly how it needs to be and what needs to happen in this very moment. And that level of peace and knowing that this is what needed to happen in my life story to wake me up to the next bits of whatever my story is going to be, for me to have greater acceptance of the medical system, for me to have, less defense in myself, all of those pieces had to happen for me for my own evolution. So I got that greater understanding of it's perfect as it is. As much as little you doesn't want this experience, bigger you knows that this is exactly right. And so off we went. And so that was that second experience that kind of brought back in, that horizon of light in that moment. So I call that one, it's not even a shared death experience. It's kind of like a shared birth, rebirth experience. I don't even know what the languaging around that is. In our community, we still have some limited terms around this. So, maybe we can create a new term.
Yeah, like shared pre-birth.
Right.
That is really remarkable. Yeah. And it's, to me, how you saw that horizon of light, it just signifies that that is an actual thing, or a concept anyway, that you will experience in a passing when you pass to
I
the other
feel that to
side.
be so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I really feel that to be so. I don't know if that's the exact place I'll go to once again when it is my time, but it gives me comfort knowing, oh, I've been to that place twice now, And so I know that that exists. And even if it's not like a real place that actually exists, but it's the way that my consciousness perceives that piece of the experience, there's now a familiarity with that. In my when was it? So I was about to turn 30. So this one happened in between the near death was as a teenager, and then my birthing experience with my daughter. This one kind of happened in between. So I had set up a counseling healing space because that's kind of where my journey took me in service to other people and helping them out and helping them pull their stories out. But I really didn't enjoy the business aspect. And so I had decided to shut the business down. As much as I loved being in service and serving, it was like the business headache. So I'd made this big decision in my outer life to do that. And I also was experiencing my cycle, and I used to get quite heavy cycles that would knock me out, at least for the first day. I literally couldn't function. I've never fainted, but I came as close as what you can come to fainting from what I've heard from people, where sounds are amplified. I get like kind of ghost white. I get pale and clammy, and I just have to be in a dark, sheltered place, pretty much, right? So it's just before that moment of kind of passing out. So I spend like a whole day like that, pretty much, used to. So that was going on as well, right? This outside element of the big decision, then that physical element was going on. And I ended up into a fever. All right. I had that first day, and somehow it took me into a spontaneous spiritual experience where I ended up in a very high fever. I was lying on a couch, and I was very unwell. I was very unwell. My mother was there, and she said, "Look, I want to take you to the hospital because something's not right here." But again, knowing what I knew about different spiritual experiences, I said to her, something else is going on here, and I just need to be with this process. So let me do this. If it gets bad, if it gets too bad, I agree that I'll go to the hospital. So my dear mother, bless her, in all of her worry, just kind of stepped back from the experience as I was lying on this couch. And I was on the couch, I think it was a 3-day long experience. And through that, the best way I can describe it is a combination of a shamanic journey, because it actually went very deep down through my roots. It was like through my left foot, my ancestral pathway of the feminine, and through the right root, the ancestral pathway of my father, right? Through my mother's line and my father's line. And this was all spontaneous. And I was going through lineages, my mother's line, my mother's parents, their parents, their parents, and the cousins and the relations. It was like I was being shown all of these people in our family and all of the places in that family tree in my own roots where healing had not been completed, where something was remained that was in pain or unresolved. And it was my task in that moment to go through and acknowledge what had happened so that an organic healing could take place with that. So this was a very spontaneous and long process that happened to go through the ancestral tracks and clear. But I guess my DNA was doing what it needed to do to clear itself, right? So that was the kind of shamanic component. And what happened after that was the energy then did a very Kundalini-like thing. So from the downwards energy of clearing the roots, now it actually started to come upwards and do a clearing in this way. So it was a very, through each of the chakras, it went through. And I ended up writing a book about this experiencing and talking about it as dancing with dragons, because it was very much like that. It was almost as though at each of these points in my consciousness, in my body, in my somatic system, like there was a whole entity, a dragon, a whole story that needed to be reckoned with and resolved and gone through. And so I very much did that. And I realized later on, when I understood this experience, I realized that I was actually clearing out a lot of my shadow stuff, a lot of the stuff that had sat and resided in my body, because our bodies are incredible, right? From the moment of, even when we're in the womb, our body is a record system, and it's taking note and it's taking record of every single experience that we are having in this human form. Every voice that we hear, everything that we see, everything is noted in our body somewhere, because we've experienced it, right? Now, a lot of that stuff is very unconscious. We kind of experience it, it goes in, and we forget about it, and it's done. But when there is trauma and when there is shadow activity and when there's stuff that was even beyond our control that has happened in our system that we were not in the place to deal with yet, right? And to integrate and to heal, then it just sits in the body and it remains. And so, for whatever reason, at this point in my life, and maybe it was, what do they call it? The Saturn returns. For whatever reason, this was the moment in my life where my being said it's time and shut me down, right? So it shut me down. And now it's going through this clearing process of, you know, past lovers and wounding, stuff that happened around my father that was unresolved, different heartache, different criticisms within myself, all of these things, everything was getting a clearing on the belly level, on the heart level, on the throat level, every single thing. And what happened when it came to the crown here was a very rapid peeling of an onion experience. It was like this was the last pieces of my identity that remained. And by this stage, I was like floppy on a couch, right? And the only thing that I could grasp onto at that level, the first one of my identity was Nicole, right? My name, Nicole. And just like an onion, the cosmos just went whoosh, and took away that level of that layer of the onion. And I was like, okay, I'm not that. That's gone. And then I'm like, girl on couch. That was the next layer of the onion. Gone. And this happened, right, until there was nothing. There was nothing. I had nothing left to grasp onto as anything that I could identify anymore. And in that moment, the magic happened. In that moment, I understood myself to be this small flicker of light, literally a pinprick of light. That's how big it was, a pinprick of light. I was nothing more than that, but I was also nothing less than that. And in that pinprick of light was everything, right? So I went, and I knew also, I knew in that moment, here's one of the messages that came through. The knowing was everything that we create outside of that pinprick of light, so all the layers of the onion, because they are creations, we're brilliant. We humans are brilliant. We are so creative. We're given these minds that are incredible. Everything that is created by us outside of that pinprick of light is a creation and a game. It's a creation and a game. It's something that we get to interact with, we get to influence, we get to shift and change. If you're not happy with your life, if you're not happy with the way things are going, that's not you. That's not you, right? These are the layers of the onion. You are nothing more and nothing less than this infinite prick of light. And so, what are you going to do about it? You have agency to change. You have the power to get creative and shift and play the game of life. Because so long as we are embodied in a human form and in a human experience, we get to play the game of life. We get to change and shift and recreate ourselves. And there's nothing wrong with that. This is actually part of the journey that we get to do, right? So this was the wonderful aha that came through. And again, it's not a typical near-death experience. It's not a typical death experience. I mean, I might have had a fever on a couch, but that's all that was really going on with my system. This was a spiritual death that happened. This was an identity death and rebirth that happened in that process. And so I share this experience too, because often when people hear these big, oh my goodness, stories about near-death experiences and like you have to die and, you know, be in mortal danger to have something like this, you don't. You really don't. Again, consciousness can be accessed at any time, at any moment, right? It just so happens that sometimes we get put into situations that have to wake us up like that, right? Yeah, so that was that one.
Did you notice that your life changed afterwards? Like, because you had released all these tensions and traumas, Were you able to kind of focus and create your life in a better way, easier?
100%, 100%. So one, I became a lot lighter after that. Life became less serious. I still engaged, and I care about deep issues, obviously. I'm a very compassionate person. But I just got a more of a lightness to me about life and what it gets to be, and play and joy as well. So all of these just became much stronger in how I govern myself and how I choose to lead life. I've also found that this is when I really got quite serious about being in service with other spiritual experiencers and helping them really pull out the gems from their experience and ground them so that they could take the next steps in life as well. And as for how I've lived my life beyond that, I mean, I went and studied these experiences more. I got a PhD in the area because I was so intrigued by all of this stuff, right? And how we make the most of it. And by doing that, I also wanted to help people normalize their experiences and understand that, just because other people around you don't get this and haven't heard of this before, or they might even think it's really weird or dangerous, or you've gone slightly insane, that actually, no, you're waking up to your being and who you are, and it's okay. And actually, these are wonderful things that can help other people, and you can bring these gifts forth to humanity to serve in useful ways. So that's really the pathway that it took me down. And where I've got to now with this is after a good 10 years now of serving spiritual experiencers and helping them get their footing in the world, I've now come back to a really earthly understanding that those cosmic experiences are great, but we have to ground them. And one aspect to grounding them, of course, is being in our physical being. Two is kind of getting the plan right and actually taking action and implementing and creating things in the world. But the other part is our material resources. I have met no shortage of spiritually very wide awake people who have great visions, who have great missions and great purpose, but they struggle financially, they struggle materially. And the challenge with that is that's a real hurdle on the earth plane because we live in a money centered world, right? We live in a material centered reality. That's just the reality of this 3D plane. And so, in order to play the game of life effectively on this plane, those of us who, are big hearted, big spirited, need to get well resourced so that we can go and manifest the vision. We can go and create those communities where we want to serve others. We can go and create the platforms because all of this stuff takes time and resource. And so when we are resourced, our vision, our mission, our purpose gets to be actioned even more. And that is super exciting.
That is super exciting. And I want to go back to your near-death experience because I kind of think that ties into what you're talking about right now. You were just 14 years old and almost drowned, but you weren't allowed to drown. Something told you how to save yourself. Did you have a mission? Did you have a purpose?
At 14?
Yeah, were you sent back with a cause?
Um, Nothing clear in terms of like, here's your role, Nicole, and this is what you're going to do in the world. It wasn't clear like that. I think those things really happen more with adult near-death experiences because you have the comparison of like my life before and my life after. I think for me, and this is typical of people who have these near-death experiences as children, we haven't yet formed our model of the world and how the world ought to be. We're still in formulation. And so when these experiences happen as children, we just accept them as this is how the world is. Yeah, there's no conflict that happens. So I think that was really the grounding of my mission, is this is normal and this is how it gets to be. And that is very much the understanding that I've walked forward with as I work with other people, is we all get to access this. Yeah.
Now, you say we all get to access this. Can you give me some tips or tricks or some simple ways that people at home that don't have special abilities or haven't had a near-death experience, how they can access their gifts.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of important points here. One is you don't need to focus on having the experience if you've never had the experience, because what the experience actually teaches you is how to be more human. There are core qualities that come out of these experiences, and you'll find this in all of the different wisdom traditions. And so these are core themes like kindness, compassion, generosity, humility, right? There are others, but there are these core themes that come out. The task and the invitation that we have is to actually live these experiences in our day-to-day, right? We can get, especially if we haven't had the experience, and even when we have had the experience, there's a lot of people who might have had a spiritual experience and then they get caught on the experience and then they go experience chasing, right? We call it peak chasing. They go peak chasing. That's lost the point as well, right? The point is, once again, these core values that come out of it. So when you live these in your day-to-day life, when you're, living kindness, you're living generosity, you're living these core beautiful, these are the most beautiful aspects of who we get to be as human beings. This is how we raise one another up, because ultimately we are all energetic beings having a dense physical human experience anyway. Life is the spiritual experience. This thing that we're doing now, life, this is the wildest spiritual experience that we get to have, because we're living and breathing it every single day. So you need not worry about trying to have an experience, and the more you actually kind of force and try to have it, the more it will probably elude you. Some people, they go to plant medicine, breath work can do it. I mean, there are different pathways that are available to us now where they can certainly induce some kind of a spiritual or non-ordinary experience, right? Plant medicine, breath work, yoga practices, etc. But I would really stress to not chase that, to not be too concerned by that, to just live your truth, and walk authentically as you, because this is where the true beauty resides. This is ultimately, we get to find the sacred in the ordinary. Yeah. And I know that might sound boring and not very flashy, but this is kind of the truth of what it comes back to as well. Like, sacredness is found, for example, when a baby is born into this world, right? That's the miracle. There's something profound and sacred in that moment when new breath and innocence comes to life, right? These are the deep moments when you have a beautiful ceremony of two people coming together in life and marriage and love. Love is the experience, right? When love is a non-ordinary experience. When you fall in love, what happens? Time bends, right? Reality takes on a whole new meaning. You're literally flying on your feet, right? You're experiencing the non-ordinary through a very human experience, right? So our daily life gets to be woven with sacred experiences when we open our eyes to them and understand. Each of us dream every single night. There again is a non-ordinary experience, right? This is a time where our regular consciousness, our thinking consciousness, the way you and I are operating right now, this takes a break, right? And another operating system gets to function. And that part of us, that brain state, it's the same state in dream state, in joy, in flow, in spiritual experiences. They reside in the same space. So this is a very easy way that we can tap in and know that you're tapping into this pretty much every single night.
I love that you describe this life as a spiritual experience, because I think a lot of times we don't think about it like that. We look at near-death experiences or the other side, or what we imagine the afterlife to be like as, the grass is greener on the other side, like it's going to be okay and all better when we get over there. But really, it's all just right now, and we've got to make it all better right now. Because when we
100%.
get over there, it's going to be the same thing that we have, You know, if we die, we're going to be in the same state of mind as we are right now. So I love that you say, you know, this is the spiritual experience, because every experience we're having is the spiritual experience. There is no separation. There can't be a non-spiritual experience that we experience.
This is school. This is
Yeah.
it. This is where we get to do the work, right? And I think a lot of people can use the spiritual experience as an escape, because earth life and human life is hard, man. It's hard, right? We go through daily reality, we bump up against people, there's conflict, there's grief, there's all kinds of stuff that happens that people want to check out of this life all the time. So I get it. Adulting and human life is very difficult. And yet, what you will find when you dig deep in choose any wisdom path, any spiritual path, any one of them, eventually, as you go deep down in that, it's going to bring you right back here to the human experience. Every single one of them is a loop, right? They can talk about afterlives and different layers and different stratas of, what happens to the spirit as it evolves and moves on. Absolutely. But the highest pathway in all of that always comes back to, and how do you apply that right here, right now, in this living existence? Right? We're loops upon loops upon loops upon loops. Yeah.
So when we die, do we keep coming back to the same school?
Well, I don't know. I mean, look, pick your wisdom tradition, and each one will kind of tell you different things on what happens. So, my answer is, for me, I don't know. I honestly can't tell you what happens.
I like
Yeah.
that. I like that you don't know, because I think people always try to sound like an authoritative figure and say that they know something. So it's very, I think, wise of you to say that you don't know. Um,
I'm not dead yet. So I don't
that's
know.
right.
I I've come back a couple of times, and all I can talk about is what happened in that cycle. But I can't tell you what happens in the great beyond. And even people in our community of near-death experiencers, a lot of people are like, this is what I saw and this is where I went when I died. Okay, and you came back. So how do you truly know that that's what happens when you died? Because you're not dead, and people can only share their experience. That's it. And so this is something I would love for your listeners to know too, is trust your experience. Trust your experience. Listen to the experiences of others. Let it inform you about the possibilities. But our universe, our cosmos, is a place, I know you've heard this before, it's a place of infinite possibilities. Infinite possibilities. And you are one of the variables within that infinite space. And so you and your experience is completely relevant to informing the rest of us as to what this whole big life experience is all about, and existence itself. Every single one of us and our experiences are relevant. And I don't think anyone holds the ultimate truth, but that's just me.
Not while they're in this life, I don't think you can. I think there's a barrier there. There's a veil, and it's there for a reason. Talking about your Kundalini experience, when you felt like this dragon going up, was it painful as it like pierced through the chakras and the traumas? And
I don't think it was a physically painful experience. Um, it was painful insofar as like having to release parts of myself and parts of me dying. But there was also great healing that took place as well within that. So there was pain insofar as emotional, psychological, spiritual pain. I had to acknowledge things that have happened in my life, woundings, scars, things that have happened that had been lodged in my being that I wasn't yet ready to process. I had to acknowledge those things. And doing that is painful, really going there. Um, and understanding things that had happened. And for example, woundings that had happened to myself when I was a young child that were beyond my control. And so parts of my being checked out from my physical body whilst physical things were happening to me, my being checked out, right? Going back and revisiting those moments and healing and comforting that child at that time, these are painful things to do, but they're deeply healing because you have to sometimes walk through the pain of these experiences to actually get past them. Otherwise, they can forever control you, subconsciously, unconsciously, because they're not resolved.
Now, did you hold on to that healing, that lightness, or did it eventually over time kind of creep back in?
Um, it was a process that was complete. So, in and of itself, it was done, and then life moved on. And so I carried on with life and life experiences. So I think it was as complete as it needed to be in that moment. And like anyone, I'm human and I continue to go through the journey of evolution. And so I guess if anything, it's just taught me that when the next piece comes up, and anyone who's been on a healing journey will know this, the quicker you can just acknowledge what's going on and be with it and move through it, the quicker it's going to get you to the other side of that. So you may as well just be with that process, get in whatever resources you need in that time, whatever people, whatever processes, anything that can help you to move through that properly, not bypass it, but actually move through it and integrate it and then get on to the next thing. It just becomes a way of being. There's usually a message I leave people with, which is just to be yourself. It's as simple as that. It's really as simple as that. Be unapologetically you, right? You were born into your body and your personality and your being and your structure and your culture. And all of these things are absolutely beautiful. And they're not things, you might hear in the spiritual community, people are like, oh, you have to, get over yourself and it's so egoic and, kill your ego and all these different things, as though you have to kind of die to who you are and what you are. Um, I would say no. I would say embrace who you are and what you are. If there are aspects of you that are unpleasant and you realize that and you keep bumping up in, ways of life, well, of course, address that, right? Because we can all improve and evolve, but do not deny who you are at your core. Because as you connect to that space, it gets back to that pinprick of light experience. As you connect more and more to that infinite space that is within you, you are going to find your life has more ease. Your life makes more sense. Your life is going to bring in the right people that you need to be connected with for the next piece of your life story to unfold. And you get to trust that, And especially when life can seem uncertain, the external world can seem uncertain, that being connected to that source of infiniteness within you, which is actually connected to the infinite that's around us, that will be the thing that will anchor you through your life experience, no matter what whirlwind happens, because you will stay true to you. You can trust that place, right? When it all happens, this is the space that we're born into the world with, and ultimately, when we die, when we leave this world, I have a family member in the extended family who's transitioning right now at this time, right? And I've watched the death experience a couple of times. There are layers of our being that leave our physical body if it's not a sudden accident, right? If it happens naturally, there are layers of us that leave, right? The first, it's like the physical density. We stop eating, we stop drinking, right? So those processes start and they start to shut down. And eventually it's our senses, right? We start to lose the sense of touch eventually, and we lose our sight. But the last one that goes is our hearing, right? We can still take into our consciousness bits and pieces. And this is also similar to like a deep meditative state, right? When all of the other senses have been kind of shut down, and all that is left is that, again, it's that pinprick of light. It's that piece of consciousness that something is still alive and aware within you still at that moment. That's the core of you. That's the core of you, right? Everything else around it is our construction. It's very noisy. all the rest of it. We can get lost in all the rest of it. But know that if you do get lost at any point, that center, that core is right there with you. And there are ways where you can learn how to bring yourself back. Go and find the techniques. If you want to engage meditation or whatever it is that gets you into your flow and your zone. Some people aren't built for meditation. I get that. If it's out surfing, if it's out playing golf, if it's out going for a walk, if it's swimming, whatever it is that kind of gets you in that zone and can connect you to that place, reside in that space as much as possible and let that be your core from where you live and shape and create your life. And very little can go wrong then.
Beautiful message. Thank you so much. You mentioned that you have a book available. How can my viewers reach out to you if they want to purchase your book or if they have more questions?
Sure. So find me on social media. That's fine. Oh, my light just went out. My light just went out. There's a joke there. So find me on social media, Nicole Gruel, and or you can get my website, www.drnicolegruel.com. So the books, I talked about the dragon experience and I wrote a book out of that. So that was that one called Dancing with Dragons. This is really like my personal spill all. It wasn't actually written to share with other people. It was written because I needed to get it out of my system. I lost 5 kilograms writing that story. It was like really amazing. That's the power of like shifting something through your being. The most recent one is called The Power of Notes, how non-ordinary transcendent experiences transform the way we live, love, and lead. This book is very short and very user-friendly. It's got lots of big pictures in it. This was actually a summary of my doctoral dissertation. And so it has a bit of the brain science in there. It has a bit of what are these experiences that we go through, and it has some nice coaching techniques and tips in terms of how do I integrate my experience and take my experiences into the world. So it's like a practical book. And this one was a whole heap of fun. This is the third one, Women of the Wise Earth. This was a collaborative effort with 33 women, some soul sisters. We went to 7 sacred sites. And this whole book, it's kind of like when you get those deck of cards, but this is like the cards, but all within a book. And so this actually goes through the 7 chakras. And interestingly, after I'd written this one, which was like the shadow side of the chakras and processing all of that dark stuff out, this happened very soon after, which was kind of like the light side of all of those chakras and how to kind of extend and embody and do fun stuff. We had a lot of fun with this. Yeah, so those are the books.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gruel, for joining me today. This has been enlightening. You are such an inspiration. I love your beautiful message.
Thank you, Tia. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I hope your listeners have received something from this. I wish you all the best on this journey as well, Tia. I think it's amazing what you're doing and you're answering the call, which is what it's all about, and implementing and putting it forward. So that's beautiful. And yeah, if there are people out there that have been, that connect and would like to connect further, I still do coaching services with people as well, where I help people out through their experiences and to process some of the big stuff that you might have been through and to figure out, okay, what was that and how do I now move forward in my life in love and in leadership and in all of those things as an embodied spiritual being.
Wonderful. And they can reach you through your website?
Yeah, they can reach me through my website. That's all through there. Yeah,
Good.
as well. Or just reach out on the socials. I tend to be on Facebook the most. Yeah.
Good. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, my dear.
Thank you for being here. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate you being here and supporting my channel. If you haven't already subscribed, please consider subscribing if you enjoy near-death experiences and other spiritually transformative stories. It helps the algorithm know that this information is useful and push it out to more people, and that's the goal. To get as many people to know that we are eternal spiritual beings and that we never die. Our bodies might die, but our essence will never die. And I want people to live with less fear. Let's all spread the word. Like, comment, subscribe, share, hit that little notification bell so you get all the notifications when my videos post. Thank you for all of your support. I'm sending love to you.